The silent zones. The Kalari survey ship drifted through the void, its sensors sweeping across dead space where stars should have been singing. Captain Varick stood at the observation deck, her forearms crossed behind her back as she studied the emptiness ahead. This was the third silent zone they had encountered in as many cycles, and each one made her scales itch with unease. "Captain, we're detecting something," her navigator announced, voice crackling with static that shouldn't exist in modern communications. "Energy readings, but they're wrong somehow." Varick's moved to the sensor station, her tall frame casting shadows across the glowing displays. The readings were indeed strange, showing patterns that defied standard physics. Energy signatures that pulsed like heartbeats then vanished, gravitational anomalies that bent space in impossible ways, and underneath it all a frequency that made her instinctively want to flee. "Send a report to the Galactic Assembly," she ordered. "Tell them we've found another dead sector, approximately 7 light-years in diameter. No stellar activity, no planetary bodies, just nothing." The Assembly had been tracking these zones for decades now, patches of space where civilizations had once thrived, now reduced to cosmic graveyards. No debris, no ruins, just empty void as if reality itself had been scrubbed clean. 17 sectors so far, scattered across the galaxy with no apparent pattern. The greatest minds of 100 species couldn't explain them. 3 days later, Varick's received orders that would change everything. The Assembly was mobilizing a full investigation fleet. Representatives from the Theron Empire, the collective minds of Zephon, and even the Ancient Watchers were converging on her position. Whatever was causing these dead zones had finally captured the full attention of the galaxy's powers. Admiral Kresh of the Theron Empire arrived first, his massive dreadnought dropping out of hyperspace like a mountain falling from the sky. The Therons were warriors, conquerors who had subjugated entire sectors through sheer might. Kresh himself was legendary, a being who had never known defeat in 3 centuries of warfare. "Captain Varick." His voice boomed across the communication channel. "Your discovery may be the key to understanding this threat. We will penetrate this dead zone and uncover its secrets." But as the combined fleet approached the boundary of the silent sector, their instruments began failing, not malfunctioning but actively being suppressed by something. Navigation computers returned null values. Weapons systems powered down without command. Even the life support systems flickered uncertainly. Then they saw them. Ships emerging from the dead zone like ghosts materializing from shadow. Ancient vessels, their hulls scarred by time and conflict. Powered by technology that seemed primitive yet radiated impossible energy. The markings on their sides were in a script none of the Assembly races recognized, yet somehow they all understood the message being broadcast. "Turn back. This boundary is sealed for your protection." The voice that came through their speakers was calm, measured, speaking in perfect translations to each species simultaneously. It was only when the Watchers, beings whose memory stretched back eons, gasped in recognition that the truth began to emerge. "Humans," the eldest Watcher whispered, its crystalline form pulsing with shock. "The lost children of Terra, they still exist. Humanity." The name was legend, myth, stories told in the oldest archives. A species that had appeared briefly in galactic history, fought wars that defied logic, achieved victories that shouldn't have been possible, then vanished without explanation nearly 1,000 years ago. Most believed they had destroyed themselves, victims of their own violent nature. Admiral Kresh laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Myths and ghosts. If these are humans, they will move aside or be moved. The Theron Empire does not yield to warnings from dead races. The human ships didn't respond with threats or displays of power. Instead, a small shuttle emerged from the largest vessel, approaching the assembled fleet with no weapons powered, no shields raised. It docked with the Assembly's command ship with gentle precision. The being that emerged was unremarkable by galactic standards. Bipedal, average height, no natural weapons or armor. The human wore a simple uniform, gray and unadorned except for a symbol on the shoulder, a broken chain wrapped around a star. She introduced herself as Commander Sarah Chen, her voice carrying a weight that her appearance didn't suggest. "Honored representatives," she began, standing before the assembled leaders without a trace of fear despite being surrounded by beings who could crush her with a thought. "Humanity has maintained these boundaries for 943 years. We do not do this for power or territory. We do it because we must. The collective minds of Zephon, a gestalt consciousness of billions, spoke through their avatar. Explain. What lies within these zones that requires such isolation? Commander Chen touched a device on her wrist, and holographic images filled the chamber. Star systems teeming with life, civilizations at their peak, then darkness spreading like infection, consuming everything it touched, planets crumbling to dust, stars going cold in seconds, reality itself seeming to unravel. A mistake was made, Chen said quietly, not by humanity but by those who came before. They reached too far, dug too deep into the fundamental nature of existence. They found something sleeping in the spaces between spaces, something that should never have been awakened. She showed them more images, beings of impossible geometry, existing in dimensions that hurt to perceive, entities that fed on the very concept of existence, unmaking reality simply by observing it. The recordings were fragmentary, distorted, as if the universe itself rejected their presence. The Devourers, Chen named them. That's the closest translation. They exist outside our reality but can enter through specific conditions. Massive energy discharges, certain gravitational configurations, or deliberate summoning. Once they enter, they consume everything, growing stronger with each star they swallow. Admiral Kresh slammed a massive fist on the table. If such a threat exists, why have we not been told? Why does humanity alone guard against it? Chen's expression grew sad. Because when we tried to warn the galaxy 1,000 years ago, no one believed us. We were called fearmongers, attempting to control others through false threats. Some even tried to weaponize what we discovered, thinking they could harness the Devourer's power. She showed them Earth, or what remained of it, a world wrapped in chains of light, massive constructs that held reality stable around a planet that seemed to flicker between existing and not existing. Our homeworld was the first breach, Chen explained. We managed to contain it, but at terrible cost. 3 billion humans died holding the line while we developed the technology to seal the breach. We learned to create reality anchors, to maintain boundaries that the Devourers couldn't cross. The Watchers leaned forward, their ancient wisdom recognizing truth. The dead zones. They're not dead at all. They're quarantine sectors, Chen nodded. 17 breaches over the past 1,000 years. Each one contained, but the space within lost forever. We maintain the boundaries, patrol the edges, ensure nothing gets in or out. It's not glamorous work. There's no glory in it. But if we fail, if even one Devourer fully manifests in our reality, conservative estimates suggest the entire galaxy would be consumed within a decade. Silence filled the chamber. The assembled leaders, beings who commanded fleets and ruled empires, struggled to process what they were hearing. It was the collective minds who spoke first. You have proof of this threat? Chen's face grew grim. You want proof? Very well. But understand, once you see what lies beyond the boundary, you can never unsee it. The knowledge itself is dangerous. She led them to an observation deck on her ship, one specially designed with reality anchors and perception filters. Through the viewports, they could see into the dead zone. At first it appeared empty, just void as their sensors indicated. Then Chen adjusted the filters and the truth was revealed. The space wasn't empty. It was full of things that shouldn't exist, structures that folded in on themselves infinitely, entities that were simultaneously massive and microscopic, stars that burned with cold fire while being dead and alive at once, and swimming through it all, the Devourers themselves, vast beings of impossible beauty and absolute horror. Several of the representatives had to look away. Others stood transfixed, their minds struggling to process what they witnessed. Admiral Kresh, the undefeated warrior, took a step back in instinctive fear. How? He whispered. How do you fight such things? We don't fight them, Chen replied. We contain them. Every human ship you see, every station we maintain is part of a vast network. We're not warriors or conquerors. We're janitors keeping the mess from spreading. We're guards standing watch through endless nights. We chose this duty because someone had to. The eldest watcher spoke, its voice heavy with newfound respect. You sacrificed your place in the galaxy to protect us all. Why didn't you simply leave? Find new space beyond this threat? The awakening truth. The revelation hung in the air like a physical weight. The Galactic Assembly's greatest powers sat in stunned silence, processing the truth that humanity, a species they had dismissed as extinct or irrelevant, had been standing between them and annihilation for nearly a millennium. It was the collective minds who broke the silence, their billion voices speaking as one. We must verify these claims. The implications are too vast to accept on testimony alone. Commander Chen nodded, as if she had expected this response. We anticipated skepticism. That's why we've prepared a demonstration. Not of the devourers themselves, that would be far too dangerous, but of our containment methods and the evidence of our vigil. She led them deeper into the human ship, through corridors that seemed to bend reality slightly, walls inscribed with equations that hurt to perceive directly. They entered a vast chamber where hundreds of humans worked at stations, each monitoring screens that showed impossible data streams. This is Watchtower 7, Chen explained, one of 53 stations maintaining the barrier around this particular dead zone. Every person here is linked to the reality anchors through neural interfaces. They literally hold space together through force of will and advanced technology we've developed over centuries. A young man, barely past adolescence by human standards, looked up from his station. His eyes were old, aged by burdens no youth should carry. Commander, we're detecting fluctuations in Sector 779. The pattern suggests a potential cascade event within the next 72 hours. Chen's expression tightened. Initialize Protocol Gamma. Redirect power from auxiliaries to strengthen that section. She turned to the observers. This happens daily. Small attempts by the devourers to test our boundaries, to find weaknesses. Each one must be countered immediately or the breach widens. Admiral Kresh, his warrior's pride struggling with the revelation, stepped forward. If this threat is real, why shouldn't we simply destroy these zones entirely? The Theron Empire has weapons that can shatter stars. We tried that, Chen replied, leading them to another section where historical records played on loop. 600 years ago, human fleet attempted to collapse one of the smaller dead zones using concentrated antimatter bombardment. Watch what happened. The recording showed a massive detonation energy that could have wiped out solar systems. For a moment it seemed to work, the dead zone contracting. Then reality screamed. The explosion had torn a hole not just in space, but in the fundamental structure of existence. Through that hole, something vast and terrible began to emerge. It took 300 ships and 50,000 human lives to seal that breach, Chen said quietly. We learned that violence only feeds them. They exist partially in dimensions where energy and matter are just different expressions of thought. The more force we use, the stronger they become. The Watchers, ancient beings who had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, studied the human technology with growing amazement. This is not just advanced technology. You've somehow merged consciousness with quantum mechanics, created a hybrid of thought and physics. Chen nodded. We had to evolve. Natural selection under extreme pressure. Those humans who couldn't adapt to the mental strain of perception filtering died or went insane. Over generations, we've developed cognitive abilities specifically suited to this task. Every human in this fleet can perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously without losing their sanity. We've become something different from what we were. She showed them children in training facilities, learning to see around corners in space-time, to think in mathematical concepts that had no words. Humans who could hold paradoxes in their minds without breaking, who could stare into the void and force it to remain void through will alone. You've transformed your entire species for this duty, the collective minds observed. This goes beyond sacrifice. This is evolution directed toward a single purpose. We call it the necessity, Chen explained. Every human child knows from birth that they're part of something larger, that their existence serves a purpose that transcends individual desire. Some call us fanatics. Perhaps we are. But fanaticism in service of survival seems justified. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The humans at their stations didn't panic. Instead, they moved with practiced precision, each knowing exactly their role. Chen's expression grew deadly serious. We have a breach attempt. Class 3 manifestation trying to push through in Sector 421. She turned to the observers. You wanted proof? You're about to see why humanity stands watch. Follow me, but do exactly as I say. Your lives depend on it. They rushed to another observation deck, this one humming with active reality anchors. Through the reinforced viewport, they could see space beginning to twist. Stars in the distance seemed to bend, their light stretching into impossible spirals. Then, at the center of the distortion, something began to emerge. It was beautiful and terrible simultaneously, a being of pure thought given form, existing in too many dimensions for mortal minds to fully comprehend. Where it touched normal space, reality began to unravel, atoms forgetting how to maintain cohesion, time flowing backward and forward simultaneously. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes where existence itself hung in balance. Then slowly, the devourer was pushed back. The breach sealed. Space returned to normal. The human fleet powered down their reality anchors and exhausted operators collapsed at their stations. 17 minutes, Chen said, breathing heavily. That was a small one. The largest breach we've contained lasted 43 days. We lost 8,000 humans holding that line, but we held it. The silence that followed was different from before. This was not the silence of disbelief, but of understanding. The Galactic Assembly finally grasped the magnitude of what humanity had been doing in their self-imposed exile. Why? The eldest watcher asked. Why did humanity take this burden alone? Why not share the responsibility? Chen's answer was simple. Because we discovered them first. Our early experiments in dimensional physics, our curiosity about what lay beyond the visible universe, we accidentally opened the first door. We felt responsible, and honestly, in those early days we didn't think anyone would believe us. By the time we had proof, we had already adapted to the task. It became who we are. She showed them more records, generations of humans who had never known peace, who had never experienced the simple joy of exploration without purpose, artists who painted reality anchors into their work, musicians who composed symphonies that strengthened dimensional barriers. Every aspect of human culture had evolved around their duty. We're not heroes, Chen continued. We're not martyrs seeking glory. We're just the species that stepped up when stepping up was needed. It could have been anyone. It happened to be us. Admiral Kresh, the proud warrior who had conquered systems, slowly knelt. It was a gesture that shocked everyone present, including the humans. The Theron Empire knelt to no one. You have protected us from a threat we never knew existed, he said, his voice rough with emotion. The Theron Empire owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. One by one, the other representatives followed suit. The collective minds dimmed their lights in respect. The Watchers sang a harmony that hadn't been heard in eons. Even the proud Kalari bowed their scaled heads. We don't want your gratitude, Chen said, clearly uncomfortable with the display. We want your help. The breaches are becoming more frequent. Our population is declining. The mental strain of the Watch takes its toll. We can't do this alone forever. The collective minds responded first. Our processing power could help maintain your reality anchors. Billions of minds working in concert with your operators. The Theron Empire will provide resources, Admiral Kresh declared, rising to his feet. Ships, materials, whatever you need. The Watchers will share our ancient knowledge, the eldest said. There may be old technologies that could strengthen your barriers, Chen smiled, the first genuine smile they had seen from her. Thank you. But understand what you're agreeing to. Once you join the Watch, there's no stepping back. The knowledge of what lies beyond changes you. Your species will never be the same. Then we evolve, the collective mind stated, as humanity evolved, as survival demands. Over the following days, plans were made. The Galactic Assembly would establish support stations around each dead zone. Species would contribute according to their strengths. The Therans would provide military discipline and resources. The collective minds would offer processing power. The Watchers would share ancient wisdom. Others would give what they could. But humanity would remain the wardens. They had earned that right through centuries of silent sacrifice. They knew the enemy better than anyone, had developed instincts and abilities specifically for this task. As the fleets prepared to depart, Commander Chen stood with the assembled leaders one final time. There's something else you should know. We've detected patterns in the breaches. They're not random. Something is directing them, testing our defenses, learning our methods. You mean the Devourers are intelligent? The Kalari captain asked, her scales paling. Not intelligent in any way we understand, Chen replied, but purposeful. They want in, and they're getting better at finding ways. We estimate that within 200 years our current methods won't be enough. Then we have 200 years to find a permanent solution, Admiral Kresh stated. The galaxy stands together now. Chen nodded, but her expression remained grave. We hope that's enough time. Our projections suggest we'll need to either find a way to permanently seal all breaches or discover the source of the Devourers and somehow stop them. There. You're talking about taking the fight to them, the collective minds observed. Entering their dimension. It may come to that, Chen admitted. We've been defensive for so long we've never considered offense. But with the galaxy's combined resources and knowledge, Perhaps we can do more than just hold the line. As the alien fleets departed, spreading the truth across the galaxy, humanity's silent watch continued, but now they were not alone. For the first time in nearly 1,000 years, humans had hope that their vigil might one day end. In the depths of space, around 17 dead zones, human ships maintained their patrols. Reality anchors hummed with power. Operators sat at their stations, minds linked to the fundamental forces of existence. They held the line as they always had. But now when they looked to the stars, they saw allies. They saw a galaxy that finally understood. They saw a future where humanity might once again explore and grow, freed from their eternal watch. Commander Chen stood on her observation deck, watching the assembly fleet disappear into hyperspace. Her second-in-command, an elderly man whose family had served the watch for 20 generations, stood beside her. "Think they'll actually help?" he asked. "They'll try," Chen replied. "Whether they can adapt to what we do, that remains to be seen. But at least now we're not alone." "We were never alone, Commander," the old man said softly. "We had each other. We had our duty." "That was enough," Chen nodded. "It was, but maybe, just maybe, our children's children might know something more, might know peace." In the distance, reality rippled, another breach attempt. Without hesitation, both humans returned to their stations. The watch continued. It always continued. But now, across the galaxy, others were learning to watch as well. The burden that humanity had carried alone for so long was finally being shared. And in that sharing, perhaps, lay the key to victory against the things that should not be. The stars still went silent sometimes. Dead zones still marked the galaxy like scars, but humanity no longer stood alone against the dark. They had revealed their secrets, shown their burden, and the galaxy had responded not with conquest or exploitation, but with respect and alliance. For the first time in 1,000 years, humanity had hope. And sometimes hope was the strongest reality anchor of all.